Natalie Davis had dreamed of prom for as long as she could remember. It wasn't just about the glittering dresses or the music. It was about celebrating the end of high school with her friends, her boyfriend Oliver, and the joy of feeling like a princess for one magical night. But now, as she sat in the principal's office, that dream was slipping away. "I'm sorry, Natalie," Principal Roy said, his voice cold and detached. "Given your situation, I can't allow you to attend. It wouldn't reflect well on the school." Natalie's heart sank. Her situation was her pregnancy, a secret she had only recently shared with her parents and Oliver. She had hoped the school would be understanding, but instead, she faced judgment and exclusion. The principal's words felt like a slap in the face. "But it's not fair," Natalie stammered, her voice trembling. "I've worked so hard for this. I've been looking forward to it for years." Principal Roy adjusted his glasses, his expression unyielding. "Life isn't always fair, Natalie. You made a choice, and now you have to face the consequences." Natalie's eyes filled with tears as she left the office, Oliver trailing behind her. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away, her mind racing. How could this be happening? She had always been a good student, a cheerleader, someone who tried to do the right thing, but now it felt like her entire world was crumbling. That evening, Natalie sat on the couch in her living room, her parents on either side of her. Her father, Joseph, a retired Marine, had a steely look in his eyes as he listened to her recount the principal's decision. Her mother, Wendy, held Natalie's hand, her face a mix of sadness and determination. "He can't do this," Joseph said, his voice low but firm. "This isn't about the school's reputation. It's about punishing you for something that's none of his business." "But what can we do?" Natalie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's the principal. He has all the power." Joseph leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Not all the power. You're my daughter, and I'm not going to let him take this away from you." Wendy nodded in agreement. "We'll figure something out, sweetheart. You're not alone in this." Natalie felt a flicker of hope, but it was overshadowed by the weight of everything she was facing. The whispers at school, the judgmental stares, the constant feeling of being watched. It was all too much. She just wanted one night to feel normal again. Over the next few days, Joseph worked tirelessly to make sure Natalie could attend prom. He reached out to old friends from his Marine days, including a few who now worked in law enforcement. Together, they devised a plan to ensure Natalie and Oliver could enjoy their prom without interference from Principal Roy. Meanwhile, Natalie tried to navigate the minefield of high school. The news of her pregnancy had spread like wildfire, and she could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on her as she walked through the halls. Some classmates whispered behind her back, while others avoided her altogether. Even a few teachers made pointed remarks, their disapproval thinly veiled, but Natalie refused to let it break her. She focused on her studies, leaned on Oliver and her best friend, and reminded herself that this was just a chapter in her life, not the whole story. The night of prom arrived, and Natalie's parents had gone all out to make it special. Wendy helped Natalie into the dress she had dreamed of, a flowing gown that made her feel like a princess. Joseph stood by, his eyes glistening with pride. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "No matter what happens tonight, remember that you're stronger than anyone gives you credit for." Natalie smiled, though her stomach was in knots. She still couldn't believe her father had managed to pull this off. As they stepped outside, her jaw dropped. Parked in the driveway was a sleek limousine, and standing beside it were 5 uniformed police officers. "Joseph's friends," he explained. "They're here to make sure nothing goes wrong. If Principal Roy tries to stop you, they'll handle it." Natalie felt a surge of gratitude. Her father had always been her hero, but tonight he had outdone himself. When Natalie and Oliver arrived at prom, the atmosphere was electric. The gym had been transformed into a glittering wonderland, and for a moment, Natalie forgot about everything else. She danced with Oliver, laughed with her friends, and felt a sense of normalcy she hadn't experienced in weeks. But the peace didn't last long. Principal Roy spotted them from across the room and stormed over, his face red with anger. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "I told you two weren't allowed to attend." Before Natalie could respond, one of the officers stepped forward. "I'm sorry, sir, but this is a public event. Unless you have a valid reason to remove them, they have every right to be here." Principal Roy sputtered, clearly caught off guard. "This is my school, and I won't tolerate this kind of behavior." The officer crossed his arms, his tone firm but calm. "Discriminating against students isn't behavior we tolerate either, sir. I suggest you let them enjoy their night." The principal glared at Natalie and Oliver, but he knew he was outmatched. With a huff, he turned on his heel and stormed away. For the rest of the night, Natalie felt like she was floating. She danced with Oliver, laughed with her friends, and even shared a slow dance with her father, who had surprised her by showing up halfway through the evening. "I'm so proud of you," Joseph whispered as they swayed to the music. "You've handled all of this with so much grace. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're less than you are." Natalie hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Dad, for everything." As the night drew to a close, Natalie felt a profound sense of closure. The journey ahead would be challenging, but she was reassured by the love and support of her family, friends, and Oliver. She was more than just a girl who became pregnant. She was a daughter, a friend, a student, and so much more. In the weeks that followed, Natalie dedicated herself to preparing for the next chapter of her life. She graduated high school with her head held high, surrounded by those who cared for her. Principal Roy's harsh treatment had ignited a conversation in the community about fairness and compassion, and while Natalie didn't view herself as a trailblazer, she hoped her story could inspire others facing similar challenges. Looking toward the future, Natalie understood that obstacles lay ahead, but she also recognized her own strength to confront them. Prom night had served as a reminder that even in the darkest times, there was always light to be found, often shining through the love of those closest to you.